Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show. Thank you for tuning in. Today is December 14th, 2023, a Thursday. Glad to have you guys here. Now, let's get started and let's take a look at what's going on. Where's my article here? About the Fed. It's happened, guys. It's happened. What's this? Fed pivot. You guys been watching my channel a long time. You know, I was probably one of the first ones to lay out this whole thing from beginning to end. What the Fed was going to do. Back before they even started this business. Saw it coming. Knew that they were going to raise rates and they were going to try to do quantitative tightening and everything, and I laid it all out for you guys. I said that they were going to cause an economic crisis. The economy would not withstand it, ultimately, and that they would be forced to pivot. But I thought that they would pivot when the market would go down. Well, the market hasn't went down. They've pivoted already. And the reason why they've pivoted, even though things seem to be okay within the financial system, and they have big talk about the economy strong and all this kind of stuff, they can see the absolute train wreck that they've created, and they can see what's coming ahead, and they're trying to front run it. They can see that this has more energy than the Great Depression, and it's scaring them. And and this is why they're pivoting. They're not pivoting because they like the idea of pivoting and turning around from the path that they've been on. They don't want to. They really don't want to. They'd like to raise rates even higher. They would like to go deeper into this, but they can't because they see what's coming. They see the handwriting on the wall, and they're trying to front run ahead of it right now. But it's too late. It's going to start to strike anyway. And so they're going to have to then go into very, very powerful indeed easy monetary policy once this really starts to strike in a couple more months. Because what they're doing now isn't going to stop it. What they're doing now is causing a little bit of euphoria in the markets. It's causing a little bit of a spike in the price of commodities, like gold and silver, you know. But it's not going to ease what's coming. It's going to require tremendous money printing operations to ease what's coming. And that's where they're going to go next. And you know how I laid all this out for you guys way ahead of time, years ago, how it would all play out. And it's played out exactly, pretty much, very close to exact, with one exception, the fact that I thought that they would ease and they would pivot because of a crash. But they're actually doing a little bit ahead of time, a little bit ahead of the crash. They're easing and pivoting. So there's a little bit of a difference from what I forecast, but not much. When you look at the overall forecast that I forecast a long time ago, it's pretty much coming true, basically exactly. And so what comes next? Because I said before, when I forecast all this, I said when they pivot, you're going to see gold and silver start its moonshot for gold and silver. I also said, if you guys remember, that at a certain point during that moonshot, and this hasn't happened yet, I said at a certain point during the moonshot for gold and silver, that all the physical's going to disappear, especially in silver. And maybe you can still get some gold, but the physical silver is going to disappear. So that's what's coming next down the pike, is we're going to see silver disappear. You're not going to be able to, retail silver is going to be extremely hard to buy because there's a certain point coming, and this hasn't hit yet either, where investors are going to start, the physical demand for silver is going to just go through the absolute roof. And that's what's coming next, but it's not here yet. What has to happen for that for that prophecy or that prediction to occur is the financial conditions out there have to meet certain specifications in order for the Fed to try to fix that with monetary policy. In other words, things are going to continue to spiral downhill out of control. Maybe not in the markets so much now. The markets are going into a melt up right now. They've just this morning reached an all-time high. Over 37,000, I think it is, for the Dow. What you're going to have to see is not all the markets turn down, but the turn down in the general economy become very oppressive for the people. And you can take a look and see out here, take a look at this. Inflation in real life is much worse than the government's fantasy world. You're going to see that now that they've lost the battle on inflation and they've pivoted, what you're going to see next is them try to support the people through alternative means, whether that means maybe stimmy checks to try to keep the people pacified, or some sort of new UBI programs to keep the people satisfied. They do not want to have the people coming at them and hold them accountable. And so the only way to really stop that now at this point, because look at this. Inflation is a real life and is much worse than the government fantasy world. It's affecting real people. It's affecting everybody out there. It's affecting me. It's affecting you guys. You guys feel it. They do not want the general population to turn against them. Not just in the voting spectrum, to turn against them, not give them votes, but in this case, it could be much worse than that, much greater. So they got to keep the people pacified. Now that they've stopped this thing about they're going to stop inflation, and they realize they can't stop inflation without destroying the economy. This just dawned on them now, and now they're starting to turn on their heel and ease. There's going to be a lot more easing. This is the direction they're going to go now. Now they're going to be forced in the direction of fiscal stimulus measures. This is what really triggers inflation, is fiscal stimulus. And yeah, you guys remember the days during the COVID crisis when they were really, really pounding out the fiscal stimulus. Remember all the stimmy checks and all the amount of money that they put into the economy? That's the direction they're going to be moving in now. Very soon, when things start to really turn downhill. And like I told you in my last show, I think it was, I said things are going to really turn downhill when people start to lose their jobs. When people start to can't maintain their households anymore. And we're not talking about small amounts of people. We're talking about maybe 40 million people in America mad at them. I can't afford food this month. Well, they got an answer for that. It's called fiscal stimulus. And they're going to have to go back to that. Now, that's when these programs and stuff, and they start to pump that money out there again, and it's coming, guys. It's coming. I would say it's only months away. That's when you're going to see the real fireworks in gold and silver. That's when you're going to see cryptocurrencies take off, because let's face it, when you cannot obtain silver, and when you have a very hard time sourcing gold if you want to buy it, and then we got all these people out there who start to realize, and these are people who maybe they got $2 billion in the bank. Maybe they got $100 million in the bank, but they're not your general Joe on the street. These are rich people. And they start to look and they start to see they're losing money on those dollars that they're hanging on to, and gold and silver shooting to the moon. What do you think they're going to want to do? They're going to want to exchange some of this held dollars for something that's going in the opposite direction. Something that's gaining value instead of losing value. I mean, they worked hard for their fortunes. It's picture like a guy on a ladder, and I mean, he's stepping on the face of the guy that's on the rungs lower than him so that he can get a purchase on the rungs to get up higher on the ladder of success. They step on other people. They've worked hard and they've cheated and they've done everything that they can do, morally unethical things, in order to obtain their fortune. You think they're just going to sit there and watch their fortune slip away through a hidden tax called inflation? No, they're all going to want to get into something that's going in the opposite direction. So how many things are there out there that they can get that's going to be going in the opposite direction? Real things. The dollars are not real. All they are is a digital ledger. And when that starts to go down rather rapidly in its purchasing power, then they're going to want real things. They're going to want things that are going in the opposite direction, things that are moving up in value. Of the monetary assets out there, that's going to be going in the opposite direction from gold and silver, from the dollars going down. In the monetary system out there's not that many avenues out. There's gold, silver, there's cryptos, and they're all going to be a rocket ship to the moon. And then all of a sudden you get to a period in time where, hey, you can't buy any gold and silver, not the real stuff, unless you want SLV or GLD or something like that, some derivative product. But if you want the real thing, you say you can't buy it. And so you're sitting there and you're holding $2 billion in your hand. It's losing value daily. You're going to say to yourself, well, I got to buy something. I can't buy gold and silver anymore. I can't acquire it. Or I can only acquire it in very small quantities. Not enough. I got $2 billion sitting over here, and I want to buy gold and silver, real physical gold and silver. What am I going to do? I know. I'll buy cryptos. They're going up too. They all start to get the same idea, and that's after the gold and silver are gone. Now, picture this. Gold and silver have already taken their moonshot. They've already went to the heavens and beyond in price, and everybody wants it. Then the massive amounts of money that are being printed and being left over on the sidelines and being held by all these rich people start to chase after what? Crypto. This is turning into, it's almost unbelievable that this could happen, but it's actually happening. And so ultimately what we might see is gold, silver, and cryptos going to areas where you could not conceive of how high they could go, priced against dollars. Because this is actually happening now. They're losing the battle against inflation. This is basically a declaration of peace against inflation that's occurring right now, because they know the system's going to go down if they don't. And you're in the last final stages now to actually get into the best one of them all, which is the one that's most vulnerable, which is got the most limited supply out there, silver. The one that's really going to charge past gold at a certain point. To when this thing hits, the gold to silver ratio, guys, the gold to silver ratio is going to change in the middle of all this. It's not going to stay at 81 or 82 to 1. It's going to make its first move probably to around 60 to 1. And it's going to continue. 40 to 1. 30 to 1. It could go as high as like 4-1. Now, if you believe that when it gets to 4-1, that gold is still going to be $2,000 an ounce, you're kidding yourself. Because at that point, gold might be $10,000 an ounce. And silver moves to 4-1, that would be $2,500 an ounce for silver. So, in my shows a few days ago, I said that people were selling when silver was really down like it was. I said that they're noobs. You know? Because maybe they don't realize that, and maybe they hung on to that silver for, oh gosh, how long? Maybe they paid more for it 20 years ago or something, but maybe they've been hanging on to it for a long time, waiting for silver to go up, and they just finally, that final thing where it went down, it went up a little bit, and then it went down, just was the last straw, and they said, well, I can't take this anymore, I gotta sell my stuff. I'm never buying silver again, whatever. Boy, gosh, if silver really takes a moonshot, over the next couple years, maybe 2 years, and goes up to like $2,500 or something, man, they're going to be kicking themselves. Because, yeah, I realize that at that point, say silver goes to 2,500, and say your dollar's lost 3/4 more of its purchasing power, say it only has 25% of its purchasing power it has now, by the time silver gets to $2,500 an ounce. But that's still like $600 silver in today's purchasing power. You got to think about stuff like that. Anyway, let's move on because we're getting bogged down in this a little bit. But suffice to say, big news, guys. The Fed's pivoting. It means things are changing now, finally. We're starting to move in the right direction as far as I'm concerned, because when you're in a Ponzi, you don't taper it. Tapering a Ponzi is kind of like a guy that's in a barn full of hay, and he says, and all the other workers in there, they say, okay, we got to move all this hay out of the barn, we got to get it out into the yard, because this is a fire hazard in here, And this one guy, he says, well, I know how to move all this hay, and he strikes a match and throws it down into the hay. This should move it pretty quick. That's not the way you do it. And that's what Federal Chairman Powell has been trying to do with inflation. He says, okay, we're going to fix inflation. He lights a match and throws it into the hay. That's what he's been doing. And for me, it was a no-brainer what was going to end up happening in the end. It's going to destroy the economy. That's like destroying the goose that laid the golden eggs for him. I mean, well, anyway, let's get on with it. Zelensky is he's been traveling all over the world and trying to get Ukraine funding and everything else, and he's evidently in a quest for additional Ukraine aid from Washington, and I guess it's not forthcoming the way he wants it. He would want another, I don't know, at least 100 billion, probably more, but I guess there's a deal 61 billion, something like that. Anyway, I'm not sure the numbers exactly, so don't quote me on that, but what's the sense of quoting the numbers, because I guess it's not coming through anyway. What is the exact numbers here that they want? Let's look it up here if I can find it. It says Ukrainian forces have fought fiercely to push back the invasion. This they did, when you consider that they were fighting against all of Russia. A small country, but at the end of the day, Russia, I guess, wants three things. Let me take a look here. Russia's goals in Ukraine are unchanged. He wants three things to be achieved here. And I was reading what they were. Here it is, right here. He wants denazification, demilitarization, and a neutral status for Ukraine. That's what Putin wants. And he's been sticking to that. He says no peace until these things are achieved. You know? And so this is what happened to Japan after the bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The United States required demilitarization, I guess, in a neutral status. Very similar, anyway. And in what was called occupied Japan, you know. Man, I'm telling you, they made some beautiful things in occupied Japan that are worth a lot of money today, like plates and things like that. If you can find occupied Japan pottery and things like that, you know. Anyway, dishes and stuff, you know. Japanese are very skilled workers. Well, they really want to. I'm going to tell you what. They can make some of the best quality products in the world, the Japanese. And they have proved it. Things like cameras and things like automobiles and things like that. When they really want to put quality in, they could make you a car that you could drive around the world 10 times and hardly need any servicing. And I mean, they did make some cars like that, awfully good during the years. Well, I'll just go into it for a minute. You guys got a minute? I'll tell you guys what happened is the first cars that were coming out of Japan coming over here were not all that great. But then the Japanese reinvested and retooled their factories in these big car manufacturers like Datsun, which became Nissan, companies like Toyota, stuff. They retooled and they spent a lot in order to increase the quality of the product that they were producing. And then they started to really produce some excellent cars that started to come out like in the 1980s and 90s and stuff, of these cars like the Honda Civics and the Toyota Corollas and things like that. But they can really make some good quality products. Anyway, Maersk ship is attacked off of Yemen. This is actually big, and the reason why this is a big story, because you've heard me talking about the Yemenis, Houthis, a number of days here, how they've been attacking almost anything that, you know, but mostly they were attacking things that had ties to Israel. Now, this is not. It says Yemen Houthis are determined to disrupt all international shipping through the Red Sea. They're evidently attacking the Maersk, and we're all familiar with Maersk Line. You know, they carry all of our stuff, all of everything, almost everything we buy. If you buy it on Amazon, comes through these big container ships. Why this is big is I don't think they're going to let them get away with attacking all these container ships. They're going to have to probably do something about the Houthis. They just can't. It's too much money involved here in all of this for them to interfere with this amount of money that's coming through here, you know? And so there's probably trouble coming. Big trouble coming if they're attacking ships like a Maersk ship with carrying the containers. Because this is world trade in the balance here. And this is big. It's big time, right? Anyway, so we're seeing this front edge of the Fed pivot, and it's not going to be the most bullish part for gold and silver and cryptos. I know you guys saw the silver go up over a buck yesterday, you know, and one nice day and whatnot, but this is not the real big moonshot. The big moonshot is coming when they start the printing presses up again, which they're going to have to do because the economy is going to take a sharp downturn. And then they start the printing presses back up. That's when the big moonshots are coming, you know. And that's when you're going to see inflation roar. You guys ever have a wood stove, you know? And you got it all full of wood and everything? You're packed right up tight full of wood, right? What happens when you open up the door? Right? Let the air in. Well, right now, what they've done is, using that as an analogy, they've opened the vents just a little bit. You know the vent slider on the stove? They've opened that vent slider just a little bit. But they haven't opened the door up yet. They're going to have to open the door up. And when they open up the door, she's going to roar. Inflation's going to roar. She's going to take off big time. And that's when we're going to start to see the massive compounding inflation. But at that point, they're going to be dealing with an economy that is much more shaky ground, because we'll have went through these economic woes that caused them to stimulate with fiscal stimulus. Okay, now moving on with gold today. Gold's 2039. It's up $12.40. Cryptocurrency today is 42,568. And Ethereum is at 2281. And XRP is at 62.5 cents. And so we see the cryptocurrencies now are, it's almost like they've got their own little headspace. It's like they're starting to disconnect. It's their own little monetary system. And so you would think that now with the Fed pivot, the Bitcoin would be shooting up. Instead today it's kind of flat. And cryptocurrencies is developing its own ecosystem. That's what I think anyway. It's not. It's always been it's always had its own little club, you know, like over there as part of the financial system is this cryptocurrency, and they got their own little club, you know, and eventually that club might get bigger and bigger and bigger. You know, when you buy into cryptos, like if you're a new person buying into cryptos, don't get way down here on the list. Don't buy coins way down here on the list. And the first thing to do, if it's the first time buying cryptos or whatever, you got to learn how to use this stuff. You know, there's a little bit of a learning curve to it too, and the second thing is you got to realize that that this stuff is very, very. Well, you know, they talk about silver. They say how volatile silver is. It's not for the guy out there who's adverse to risk and all this stuff. This stuff is far more volatile than silver, as far as I'm concerned. This stuff is like high octane, you know, and you know, I only think my philosophy on it is you don't need an awful lot of it. Because if this stuff completes its role in the financial system that it's planning, if it's able to do that, then it's going to be worth an awful lot of money. Especially the coins of the value coins like Bitcoin itself, which is a hoarder's dream. I mean, it halves. There's a halving every 4 years. And that means every 4 years there's only half as many Bitcoin out there as there was 4 years before. It means the miners out there only get half as much coming in. And so what that means is it means shortages. Ultimately. It means that a dwindling supply of money. If Bitcoin is money, let's call Bitcoin money. If Bitcoin is money, it means a constantly dwindling supply. And what does that mean? It means it's deflating, not inflating. All other monies we're used to. Everything we're used to. The dollar, all of it. It all is impacted by inflation. It's all inflationary. All of it. This is a currency right here that is deflationary. It's an animal you're not used to. It behaves in strange ways. And that strange way it behaves is it becomes scarcer and scarcer and worth more and more as time goes by. And there's no end to it until it absorbs everything. That's its mission, to absorb the value of everything in the entire world and be priced in Bitcoin. Ultimately, where does that leave you in the end? It leaves you with a position where you could base your whole retirement on 0.04 Bitcoin. In other words, 4/100th of a Bitcoin would probably be enough to have a whole retirement on. So how many dollars now do you need for a retirement? Well, some people, they got $1 million out there now, and they're worried that they might not be able to successfully have a retirement. Now, next year, they might have $10 million and say, well, I don't have enough for a successful retirement. And the following year after that, they might need $100 million, and they'll say, I don't have enough for a successful retirement. And go one more year half past that, and they'll have $1 billion, and they'll say, well, I haven't got enough for retirement. We'll see, it works exactly the opposite with Bitcoin. With Bitcoin right now, the guy's got 5 Bitcoins, and he says, well, maybe 5 or 10. Maybe he's got 10. He says, well, maybe I can retire on these Bitcoins. He's got 10 Bitcoins, right? And a year from now, he might only need 5. And the year after that, he might only need 1. And the year after that, he might only need 1/4 of a Bitcoin. The year after that, he might only need a tenth. And then, see where I'm going with this? It's moving, because it's deflationary, it moves in the opposite direction from the dollar. I mean, how long is it going to be until everybody out there says, my dollars are losing purchasing power too fast for me now? And this is one of the things the Fed's scared of. This is why they've done all this fight against inflation, because they know if the inflation rate gets too high, there's an inflectionary moment. A moment in time where everybody out there says, I'm getting out of these because they're losing value too quick. And they spend them as fast as they get them, and that's when you get hyperinflation. Hyperinflation is basically a realization amongst the general population that they got to get out of this because this is inflating too fast. So where does that inflection moment come in? It comes in at a stage of inflation that's called the acceleration phase. And that's when you start to get like your 20% annualized CPI numbers. 20% by their reckoning. So like we were getting about halfway there. Remember? That's when the Fed went into this fight against inflation. By their reckoning, we were what, 9%, 8 point something percent? We were almost halfway there to that inflection point, which would probably be around 20% by their reckoning. And that's when everybody out there says, I got to get out of these dollars. They're terrified of that. So what they did was they went in this fight against inflation. Now they got down to what, 3%? And so they've backed away from people having that. In fact, some people now are hoarding dollars because they're all confused. But now they've pivoted. Now we're going to start to move back toward that reckoning point, that moment of inflection where everybody says, hey, you know what? These dollars are losing value too quick. I got a lot of them in the bank. I got to get rid of them. And fast. What am I going to buy? What's available? Gold and silver. Excuse me. Okay. Crude oil. Oh, the Dow Jones, 37,164. It's up 73 points. And taking a look at crude oil today at 71.98. It's up $2.51. So crude oil's taking a pop to the high side. A little bit higher. We're looking at the 10-year today at 3.91. Ooh, the yields are dropping. 11.6 basis points has fell down. Back into the threes. US 30-year at 4.06. It's down 1.2 basis points. So if you want your yields over 5%, you got to move to a 1 month. That shows you how everything's upside down right now. Taking a look at the dollar index, boy, we're seeing some dropping now. 101.88. She's fallen. So that inflection point's very important. That's the psychological aspect of a hyperinflation. And it basically revolves around the people out there saying, I can't stay in these. They're losing money too fast. They're inflating too quick. I'm losing everything I worked for. Maybe the guy's got $1 billion. And he says, by this time next year, I'll only have 900 million left. My billion. And I worked too hard for that billion. I don't want to lose $100 million in a year to inflation. That's it. I got to get into something that's going in the opposite direction. Whether I buy old sports cars, or I buy memorabilia, or I buy gold and silver, I got to buy something. I got to get out of these dollars because next year I'll have lost too much money because they're inflating the value away too fast. That's the inflection point. Where does it come in? I figure it comes in around 20% by their reckoning of inflation. So by the real inflation, because the real inflation number, the real CPI is probably double what they're saying it is. So they went up to 8%, 8 point something percent. That was really 16, 17%. It wasn't enough to trigger the inflection point. But you double that and get up to their reckoning of 20%, which would really be 40% inflation per year. And believe me, they will trigger it. And then we're in for the hyperinflation. Because everybody starts to dump the dollar. And that can happen really fast when it finally does happen. And I think that it's coming. It's taken years to get here. I've been on this channel for a long time preaching this. We've been very slowly moving toward it. We're going to cross the line. And then look out. Thank you guys for listening. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in the next show. Bye-bye.